Hi, everyone. Last breakout session, end of the conference. We still got some energy? Yeah, all right, cool. So I want to talk to you about, I love this, I'm a Harry Potter nerd and a Star Wars nerd and a Star Trek nerd and a Lord of the Rings nerd, so I got your Doctor Who beat. But the idea here is ultimately, we talked about this a little bit, but like when your company gets big enough, right, you start fighting different types of battles. And so I want to go into this and elaborate on that a little bit. So typically, when I ask this question of what are the biggest challenges, what are the biggest blockers that are keeping you from doing what you want to do, right? We get answers like this, right? Our competitors are really strong, they're coming out with amazing products. Well, customers just don't know what we do, right? Customers don't know who we are or what we're making. Or, right, there's a million iPhones or there's a million smartphones. How do I make sure that customers know what mine is? So we spend some time on this, and if you go to an MBA program and you go get an MBA, like you'll learn how to go tackle some of these. But the reality is you spend a lot of your time fighting these types of battles, right? Now, and our color doesn't show up as well, I'm sorry. But anyway, if you've ever fought a battle about one of these things, raise your hand. I'm going to move out of the way. If you've ever fought a battle about one of these things, raise your hand, right? Everybody in the room has done this. And it's not just 20% of your time, it's not 40% of your time. This is most of your day, right? These are some of the challenges that you always have to go through and fight. So the question is, how do you get around that? How do you go beat that? So let's do a quick little internal, external battle, right? Are we facing internal battles or external battles? So if you think this is an external battle, raise your hand if you think it's an internal. I'll ask external first, then internal. So our product isn't addressing a big enough need. Do we think this is an external battle? Raise your hand. Couple, yeah? Pretty strong, okay. It is an external battle, that's great. I want to everyone gets the right answer the first time. So how about this next one? Listen, campaigns, they just don't launch that fast, okay? If you want to get this out, we need at least 8 weeks to send this email. Is this an external battle or an internal battle? Internal, yeah, exactly. How about this next one? Our competitor is going to release something awesome in 2 weeks, right before our launch. Is this an internal or an external battle? Got both. It's an external battle, right? This is out of our control. This is what our competitor is doing. We can't fund that project. It just costs too much money this quarter. Internal battle, right? All right, one last time. I won't belabel this to death. Our engineers are working on bigger things. I'm sorry, we just can't help you out. Internal, right? Clear as day. Conflicting priorities. So the idea is that it's not that one of these is necessarily a right fight or the wrong fight, but they're different types of fights, right? They're different types of challenges that you have to face in the workplace that you have to overcome in different ways, right? Your external ones, they're more obvious, right? There's something that's really clear and tangible that the market is providing you as a signal that you have to go tackle. There's surface level details that are there, and what needs to happen is generally pretty simple. That doesn't mean it's easy, right? It means that the information and the direction that you need to head is simple. If our competitors don't know who we are, we need to spend some money on marketing and raise awareness, right? If we have a competition issue, we need to build a better product, right? It's not a simple solution, but it's a simple direction that you need to take. Whereas your internal battles, this is generally called, I'm playing the political game well, right? There's this hidden aspect to it. There are these underground aspects where there are nuance and people, and it's not necessarily a clear thing of what you need to accomplish. Now, if you solve great external battles, that's awesome. You're gonna make a lot of money. When you get to a bigger organization, though, those internal battles that you're going to fight are the key to building lasting change. More importantly, if you want to do something differently than the way the company currently does things, this is going to be the way that your team will flourish. It's going to be the way this success, these internal battle wins, are going to be the way that you're actually able to expand scope and do things a little bit differently. Now, throughout this wonderful, wonderful event in Pittsburgh. You've learned lots and lots of different ideas. I'm sure you have tons of new things that you want to go home and try. The question is like, well, how do you go do that, right? What's the process? What's the system to go implement a new idea in the company that's already working and doing what it's doing to get to an outcome. We talked very briefly in the panel earlier this morning about your company wanting to get a standard output. And what that means is that as a team and as an individual, you are trying to get the same thing again and again, which means your innovation is being killed, right? The magic of that sort of spark, the champagne moment, if you will, is lost because you want to get 10,000 units out the door so that the street likes your numbers, so that your stock goes up. It's totally understandable, but that's the cost and the trade-off that you've paid. So here are 5 organizational beasts, these internal battles that typically pop up. We're going to walk through each one. I'm going to give you a tactic for how to do it. I'm going to show you how we've done it and beaten it at Adobe. And then we'll have some questions. You guys can ask me whatever you want, and we'll go from there. Sound good? Yeah? This gentleman in the back, we don't need Evan. He's a friend of mine from business school. Evan, how much time do we have left?
About 45 minutes.
45 minutes, OK. You'll understand why I'm doing this in a little bit. So let's start with the first one. Comfort with the status quo. I know it's really hard to see. There's like this beautiful little gray shadow box thing. It looks great. I'm really sad. I don't know what's going on. It's fine. Raise your hand if you've ever heard one of these comments about something you tried to do or a new team that you tried to build. Oh. Yeah, right? Everyone in the room, like a lot of people are nodding. If you haven't, you're awesome. Great job. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Right? So it's just not the way we do things here. You'll never get that to change. It's just impossible, right? So the idea, though, how do you fight? This is really, all right, there's some, can we play with the color contrast at all? Anyway, 3 ideas. You need a plan. That plan should provide clarity. That clarity should get you to a point of conviction. No worries, it's fine. So, what's that? Nothing. So let's go through this, right? So they're breakdown into each step. There's plans about this. Fundamentally, here's the components of your plan. Am I doing something that matters to the business? Is this new team that I want to form? Is this new project that I have an idea about? Is it going to do something that matters to the end goal of the company? Number 2, do you have a vision for what that should be, right? And number 3, what is the timeline for getting it done? I'm going to show you what this looks like here at Adobe. Is what we're tackling important? Yep, we're going to go after onboarding for our point product. This isn't a form, it's just kind of the way we go things. We have a vision of what that looks like. I'm going to show you that in just a couple seconds. Do you have a timeline for when you want to accomplish this? Sure do. 60 days from the day we pitched to when we launched a 1.0. All right? I know that sounds insane. It is. There's a very important reason for that, and we'll go into that. What about the next layer? What about clarity? Well, why do we think it can be improved? Well, because it's actually not meeting customer intent the way we want it to. Who needs to be on the project? We need 3 core full-time people, and we're going to rotate in a bunch of extra help. And it's going to cost us a couple $1,000s. All right. The goal of these questions is very, very simple. You need air cover to try something new. That means your boss is going to empower you to go try a crazy idea. When my team comes to me and says, James, there's something crazy I want to go try, if they can answer this, I know they're on the right path. I know that they're thinking about the company in a strong and healthy, wonderful way. I don't mean to walk in front of your line of sight, I'm sorry. Right? I know that they're going to go after something that matters. I know that they have an idea of what that should look like. They have an idea of why what we're doing today can be improved. They know who they want on their team. They know how long they're going to take to accomplish it. And they have a rough idea of what it's going to cost. I can account for the flexibility that my team needs to accomplish these things because they've already done the mental work. When we go to our VPs and we ask for this, this is how we got air cover. This is how we got the sign-off to say, you know what? Go try it. Let's see if it works. Right? This is the way that you empower your team and you are empowered by your boss. Does anybody know what this screen is? Maxim, you're not allowed to answer. Sure is. This is a landing page. I've opened a blank canvas. Does this screen scare anybody? This screen scares me, all right? When I'm like, all right, I need to go create the EVO logo, that screen scares me. If I am trying to edit a movie for the first time and I open Audition, that screen scares me. I don't necessarily know what I need to do. This is not friendly for you if you are not proficient in Photoshop already. Let's try something about that. So no joke, this was our pitch to our VP about what we wanted to do. Your great Photoshop journey begins. You're a photo editor. We're not going to even have you in the app. We're going to show you some videos. We're going to connect you with a community. There's some like raffle ticket thing idea we had, right? The reason why I'm saying this is it's not a perfect idea. You can see 10 things wrong with this if I give you a minute, all right? The idea is that you have a vision for what you want this to be. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I can't stress it enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about the perfect idea. It's about building a process that is going to help you get through this. So here's our V1. It's rough. Anybody want to collect Adobe raffle tickets? Okay, I've got a market for 3 people. This is going to be great. Here's your next battle, conflicting goals. This is the one I run into all the time, all right? Just for fun, audience participation, it's the end of the day. Anybody? Anybody fought these? Heard these on a regular basis? Yeah. So this is smart, right? When you get to an organization that's big enough, it's important to have conflicting goals. Friction actually becomes a little bit of a good thing. You want teams competing on some level. The issue is that oftentimes you will create roadblocks when there can be synergies. I promise that's the only time I'm going to use that word today. Now, when I am in an interview with a candidate, the very first thing I ask them time and time again is, how do you work with somebody who has a different goal than you do? All right? Some people don't have an answer. That's not great. The common answer that I get, though, that's pretty much the bar standard now at this point is, well, I explain how my KPI is really their KPI. A KPI, a key performance indicator, for anyone who doesn't have alphabet soup baked into your brain. So the whole idea is, like, that is the bare standard. But I have air cover now. I have a VP who's just told me that I can go after this project. I've just empowered my team to say that you can go spend time on this, and there's resources for you, and there's people who I want to help you with your project. And so now I can start to take this air cover and barter it. I can use it like currency in the rest of the organization. And what this means is that I can go to the user research team and say, listen, I've got enough money to hire a contractor for 8 weeks, and I know that there's a project that you want to work on. I need 4 weeks of somebody on your team who's awesome, and then I'm going to give you that 8 weeks of contractor. You're building a collection of resources to go barter and use to help other teams achieve their goals so that you can achieve yours. The second one is all about building empathy, all right? This is some like secret sauce magic. I think people do it unintentionally all the time, but if you can do this intentionally, it becomes a huge win. When we started this project, we controlled 2 things, and that's what's on the left-hand side of the screen. We controlled what the learn strategy was, and we controlled product marketing. What we then proceeded to do was recruit somebody from every other team to be a point person on this project. And what that meant is now their success is tied with our success. You're building cross-functional empathy in a way that means you are sharing the win, you are sharing the time constraints and the pressure that you are going to feel from the organization, and you are starting to spread that idea before you ever get to a launch component. All right? The other part I want to talk about in this is a diversity of time. And so if you are in the same office with everybody else in the world, guess what? Those 60 days really mean I only have 68-hour days, right? As soon as I start to spread diversity across where I'm working and how I'm working, now I can work 60 24-hour days, right? And it seems simple, but what we ended up doing, that design agency at the bottom, our product engineering teams, we had a 24-hour development cycle. And so what happens is, in San Francisco, we'd wake up. We'd look at the engineering build that the team in India had put together for us and the web build. We figured out what needed to be changed, and we put it in front of customers the very same day. We have an idea of what that process looks like. Then we look at design changes that the customers have implemented. We send that off to the team in Germany, where our design group is. They refine that, and it starts getting coded the very same day back in India, right? We had engineering teams in the US as well working on other components. The whole point is that you work throughout the entire timeline. If you are locked into one 8-hour day, you're not really using all of your time, and you're not building true diversity across your group. Now, I already alluded to this, but the other thing that is so crucially important about this is your customers are part of your team, right? When you go in front of your boss, when you go in front of your VP, when you go in front of your C-suite, and you say, hey, I've got this crazy idea, but oh, by the way, I've talked to 500 customers, and this is the feedback that we've gotten, and now we're on to version 10, and this is how we're continuing to iterate. You're no longer a person of 1, you're no longer a person of 3 or 12, you are 500 plus customers who are asking for a solution. Never forget that your team always includes your customers. Now, sometimes your customers can be a little rough to your idea. That's okay. So here's literally a couple versions later on the right-hand side, right? We've gotten rid of the raffle tickets. That was a bad idea. Let's just be really clear. Raffle tickets, sorry you 3. Not gonna come to life. What's that? Oh, yeah. We'll figure out a way to get you a Photoshop pillow though. That'll be okay. So what's happened now, we've got some videos, we've collapsed a little bit of the timeline, but we're still asking users for a really long window of time here. And this is the best part, right? They're gonna help us create a better product. They're gonna help us sell our story to the agency, the organization, and they're gonna help us create a better ecosystem. I love this. Users don't care about the macro Adobe journey, right? This seems to be an instruction booklet on how to be a good Adobe customer. You're not actually helping me do what I want. This is awesome. Your customers are telling you what they need, and that in turn lets you make the best product possible even faster. Making sure that they're part of your team and that diversity is gonna really help you expand and move faster, and more importantly, be a shield against all of the random ideas that are gonna come from within the rest of the organization. Your customer voice always takes front and center. All right, good intentions driven by fear. This is a really hard one. There's a lot of friends who are like, yeah, this is great, but what if it fails, right? How many people are already working on this? What if working on this means that I'm not gonna hit my goal for the end of the year? Like my personal goal, like I'm gonna lose money. Or this is gonna lower the download rate. What's gonna happen then? The coolest thing about this, and the most important thing, is transparency is a solution to almost everything, right? We look at it as an ethical solution frequently. That's the kind of buzz about transparency, right? It's like build in an open box, build with clear windows. But ultimately, social acceptance of an idea, social acceptance of a team or a process can also be accomplished through open windows. And so what you're doing is you're leveraging that same insight and that same awareness and perspective building that people are doing through transparency to be your benefit. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like because this is a little tough to envision, but the idea is transparency in everything. So Evan, how much time do we have left? 32 minutes, okay, thanks. I think some of you have an idea where I'm going. So here's a Slack channel. This is part of the public organization Slack. This is actually something that we released. This is an open channel to the entire organization. Here we go. Opus is gonna launch in 14 days. What did we learn? What have we done? What's been a challenge that we faced? What are criticisms that we've had? All of this is public debate. The key decisions that we've made, the pivots that we've done, the customer feedback, all of this is publicly available at a drop of a hat. All you have to do is go back and look through the entire process and you will see everything that has been decided, everything that has been debated, and everything that's gonna happen. We're taking the responsibility of doing all the testing for in-app home screen campaigns on the web itself prior to handling the QE team's efforts. We're gonna enter it in 4 days from now, right? All of this is publicly available. Here's another screen. This is, it's kind of hard to imagine in the office, but we have these big open corridors where everybody walks through and there's like a whole other like column where all the desks are. So this room off to the right, over on here, is actually where all of our C-suite comes and does their operational staff meetings every week. Right around the corner from that is our really poorly written and drawn workflows. And up at the top over here, these are actual challenges that we need to face, or things that people have raised as potential objections that we need to go solve. This transparency comes through in everything, and it's open, and it's addressable, and everyone can come in and contact and be a part of it. The whole point is just because you're not working on the project doesn't mean that you're not a part of it, and it's not a part of you and part of that growth. And finally, this is the one I am near and dear to my heart the most. What are the norms of your team? We're building a process here. We're building a group and a team effort, and what that means is that we need to define an identity that is not our corporate identity. We need to have something different that's going to help us be resilient against those times of pressure, against those other fights that we have. So this right here, right on the other side of the wall, was the norms for the team. Again, full view, full capacity. Everyone could walk by. Everyone could comment on it. Yes, it does spell out B-Bay. We figured that out later. That's okay. But ultimately, right, the whole idea is, here are some things that we really strongly value as a group, that we really strongly value to this team. We want you to be brave, we want you to be active, and we want you to be excellent. And that's what this means. The other side of this is you need to celebrate when that happens, right? And so when Johnson or James or anybody on our team goes ahead and does one of these things, despite other pressures from the organization, you want to celebrate that. That's a win. That's awesome. Empower that. Probably the most controversial slide in the entire deck. I don't mean this in terms of 1940s Italy or Spain. What I mean in terms of this is the authoritarian component of this. So we've all faced one of these, right? Listen, I need you to stay late. The VP wants another look. You got to do this deck again. I need you to work a little bit harder on this project because this is what needs to happen today, or guess what? The boss is going to be mad. Right? Setting that time, this is organizational cadence, right? And Evan, how much time do we have? 28 minutes, cool, thanks. This is organizational cadence. What it's doing is the company is setting the breath of life for everything, okay? The way you do that is you establish a new heartbeat. The way you tackle that is you be just as unreasonable, but in the best way possible. And so what I mean by this, and there's a George Bernard Shaw quote up here, right? The unreasonable man adapts himself to the world, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. All progress depends on the unreasonable man. Huh. Do we like it? So here's the deal. If I want to change the way the organization feels, if I want to change the way that this project is going to act and have a rhythm and a heartbeat, I need to demand just as unreasonable a timeline, if not more so. But the difference is I'm not doing it because you have to. I'm doing it because I'm asking you to. I'm doing it because I'm sitting here and saying that as your peer, right, I want you to try something with me. I want you to empathize that I want to change the system, and I think you do too. I want to bring us together and show that there is a different way to do things. And it's not because you have to. It's not because you don't have other things to do. We all know you do, but you and I together, you and I in this team, all of us together, all the work that you're seeing publicly that all of us are going through is about getting to this idea of we have a different pace. Evan, where are we at in time? 26 minutes, that's fantastic. So I'm not actually allowed to show you the next slide. That being said, the way we captured this spirit at Adobe for our project was we literally had, the other panel that I didn't show you was the general workflow of how long it takes us to do anything. And what we did was we said, here's our T minus, and there's a post-it note that changed every day. Don't know why I couldn't show you this, but that's fine. There's a post-it note every day, counting down from 60 to how many days till launch. And every single day, we marked how far in advance we were of the normal process that we were doing. And yes, it was hard, and yes, there were a lot of late nights, and yes, I have lots of gray hair from it. But the idea is that everybody could see a different pace, and they could feel a different pace, and they knew what it meant to be in that. right? So, Evan, where are we at?
25 minutes.
He's my Post-it note.
Oh, you're making it go longer.
It's the last time I'll do it. But that's the idea, right? Is the pace of the experience is always front and center. Now, the first couple times I did this, every time I got to this, and I just want to tell you that I hear Taylor Swift in my head whenever this slide comes up, right? It's like haters gonna hate, 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 hate. And ultimately, that's what this is, right? The whole idea here is that you're always gonna have naysayers, and that is something that you have to overcome. But that beast, that battle, those full-time critics are actually one of the easiest things to overcome because of how you've built the rest of the system. So, how many people of you have heard something like this when you've proposed a new idea? two hands over here. I love it. Of course I have, right? And I'm not gonna lie, like there's been a day or two where I've said one of these things, and then I'll go home and I'm like, shit, that was the wrong thing to do, and that was terrible. And you'll catch yourself doing these things, right? They're second nature to us because we become compliant. We become complacent in the status quo. But here's what these things mean. They're a badge of honor. What this means is that you are changing the status quo. You are making people feel uncomfortable. You are building something that is different and feels different, and that is not always okay. That is not always a comfortable transition. So when you get those hater comments, yeah, it's gonna hurt, and it's not gonna feel great, but you know what? It means you're winning. So take it as a good thing. Now, what we've been building to in this process, what we've been building to through this journey is that my project doesn't actually matter. What I'm doing is building a system of how to work. I'm building an identity of a new team and a new culture in how to accomplish things in a greater organizational system that is designed to stop that, right? And so regardless of the criticism being vague, or if it's super specific criticism, it all comes back to the process. And the way you deflect this is with the process. So let's go through these examples one by one, and you'll get this idea. Sure, you know, James, it's great that you want to change Photoshop onboarding. It really is, but we don't even know if this is going to work. Hey, you know what? You're right. That's why we've made 10 pivots from our original idea. And you know what? The thing that we release on day 60 might not work either, but that's awesome because I've already shown that my team can move 10 different pivots over the course of 60 days. And so whatever comes back and whatever data comes through and whatever our QA missed, guess what? Our team can fix it. We know how to move that fast. We know how to do that work. The process is the solution. Hey, you know, we've tried this type of thing, right? Like we've tried Photoshop onboarding in a different way. We've done videos. It didn't work. Hey, you know what? You're totally right. And guess what? We looked at that too. And again, we've incorporated that feedback. The early iteration didn't work either. We've built a process. Everything, all your solutions come back to the process that you've built. Listen, why are we putting so many resources? Why do you have extra headcount and dollars? I could go spend the dollars on other things that are far more important. Literally, no joke. I've had somebody question why I spent $10,000 on something, okay? It happens. Corporate dollars, not personal dollars. And here's the thing. It's about the investment. It's about the scale. And it's not about whether you can do this one time. It's about whether there can be a second generation and a third generation and a fourth generation. If the team and all those people you brought in, all that diversity you brought in from all the different cross-functional orgs, take those ideas and that path and that heartbeat that you built and go spread that to the rest of the organization. There's a fantastic podcast by this name. I completely, go find it. It's awesome. I don't want to actually plug anything, but the whole idea here, right? And I'm not actually going to go into whether or not this project was successful or not because it doesn't matter. The idea is that if it works, and that's awesome, and you've done a great job. The team wasn't special, the process was special, right? If you are successful in this, it's not because of any one individual effort, it's because of the whole group. But if you failed, guess what? I failed in 60 days instead of 6 months. I learned 22 different iterations of things by the time the project was over, and I documented all of it publicly in the decision-making process of publicly how we got to this point. If we fail, it is the most successful failure that we have ever done in the history of the company. Right? The whole idea here is creating a way for change to happen. And this success or failure of idea doesn't matter, because the process and what matters is your change. Right? So when we go back to our battles, when we go back to our beasts, and all the things that we've done and tackled, right? We went after the status quo by taking conviction, taking a stand about what we thought mattered, why we think we should change something, what air cover was actually needed from our bosses or that we needed to give to our employees. We tackled conflicting goals by working with diverse partners. We found winners from other parts of the organization, and let me just tell you, as engineers, you are the ones that we all want to work with, all right? Like, no joke. All the marketing people are like, I need to find some engineer friends, all right? That is just legit truth. For fear, we've been transparent about everything. We've shown publicly how this works, how this experience can grow and build out. We've tackled this top-down decision-making, this top-down cadence of how a corporation moves by being even more unreasonable and inspiring people to do something that's unreasonable because they want to come along with us, right? The whole idea here is your boss never gave you air cover because they thought you had the perfect idea. It's because you had the right concept of what mattered and you took a stance. People joined your team because they wanted to work in a new way and they believed in some vision that that was the right thing to go after. You tackled fear because you were transparent. You solved problems communally. Everyone recognized that when they had those fears, everyone got together and problem solved them and saw how that process took place. You were unreasonable, you inspired, and finally, all those haters, they're tackled by the process. Your decision-making process through this, the cycle of how this works, ties this together so that any one person's voice, any one naysaying component can't overcome the power that you've now created, right? The decision-making is done openly and transparently, and so decision-making cannot be questioned without questioning the entire group. You created that power. I'm going to leave you with this quote before we get to questions, because there's moments like this that happen in the universe, right? 50th anniversary just happened to the moon landing. Total, again, nerd, right? But Kennedy, this is the same idea, right? We go to the moon, we go tackle these things, we go after these new concepts, these new projects, these new teams and cultures, because we want to prove that it can be possible. And if we'd failed in getting to the moon, we still would have done amazing work and shown that there was a different way to do things. So whatever your thing that you've learned at this conference, John, there's many, I'm sorry. There's many things, whatever the many things you've learned at this conference are, that you want to go home and implement, give it a try. Take these 5 steps to push back against the way that your company is going to try to force you to do the same thing you normally do on your 9 to 5. And give it a shot. Prove there's a different way to do things, and people will follow you. Who's got questions? Sir?
Most advantage what you got to all these things publicly available, right?
Sorry, one more time.
So everything what you have done is recorded and also publicly available.
Yes.
Okay.
The designs from earlier in the company are not. We have a released version, but yes.
Okay, in order to apply what you have done to our case,
Yep.
Can you share with what you show us?
One more time.
Your PowerPoint slide, can you share or post somewhere we can download it and
Yeah.
apply for us?
Of course.
All right.
I'll have to take out that's fine. I'm here representing myself and do not formally represent the company of Adobe. But yes. Oh,
How do you tackle the worst?
Hold on, Mike, please.
Oh.
Being recorded. Let's go here and then I'll come back.
you'll be next. Sir.
So I'm struggling with getting things done on time when there's external market drivers. Like you have to hit a date to beat your competition to market.
Yeah.
And how in a smaller organization where you don't have worldwide resources so you can use the time zone benefit, how you accomplish that without just crazy overtime and all of those issues.
Yeah, so it's a really good point. I think one of the interesting shorthands that I always kind of like when I go to a bigger company and talk about this is imagine that there are 8 people in a garage, right? And they have some amount of dollars and things like that. Would they have the same problems that you do, right? And so I think what the question is getting at is you are going to release a product. Yes, your time cycle is going to have to be different just by the nature of the size of your organization, right? And that's totally fine and natural. That being said, you also have flexibility in how you execute that. Like one of the things that I would immediately think of asking is, well, instead of everyone doing a 9-to-5 cycle, if I had a team of 5 people, right, and I had to get something out the door by a certain date, well, what would it look like if some people started at, don't hate me, 6 a.m. and wrapped at noon or 1, and then other people started at 11 and wrapped at 7, right? So the whole idea is how do you create a continual path of work so that you're diversifying? So like if you have a way that all 5 people can be working continuously on things at the same time, that's fine. But if you're up against a wall like that, I would tell you diversify out how that process goes and trust the workflow of everyone's going through. It's tough though. Yeah.
How do you handle? I hate these things. I've got a big mouth.
She's got a great voice. I can hear her loud and clear. Hopefully the camera can
I
too.
teach in a 500-seat auditorium. How do you handle
Yeah.
the situation where you have the insecure, paranoid manager that's just above you who wants you to succeed, but not to succeed spectacularly, because that means that next review time, you're doing his review. And he's scared that he's going to get replaced if you do a really great job. He doesn't want you to be a total screw-up, but he wants you to just be so good, but not great.
That feels like a big status quo component. So, slightly controversial answer, but what I would suggest there is that share the win, right? If your boss is your biggest blocker and that is the thing that is stopping you, guess what? It just became your boss's project, and that's cool. And they're going to rely on you to, like, once you complete that, they're going to get some credit, and you'll get some credit, but they're not going to be able to accomplish the next thing without you. So if the one barrier that you have is that your boss doesn't want to go challenge that, that's a status quo issue. And the best end around that I can think of there is make sure that they're part on the project. Make sure that they're absolutely a lead on that with you. And that's going to help them feel, that's going to overcome that insecurity, right? Because that's coming from a place of fear. This is like a nice little bonus, like twofer. But ultimately, it's coming from a place of fear and coming from a place of protecting the status quo. But the reality is they've hired a great team. They've hired, theoretically, me or you, whoever that is. And you can help them advance by advancing the goals of the team and the organization.
Thank you for the great talk. I found it interesting when you talked about the authoritarian style versus inspire, and you spent quite a bit of time talking about time, how people worked long hours, how people worked evenings and whatnot.
Yep.
And I found that quite contrasting compared to one of the earlier talks that we heard today, that family is number one, that family is your number one team, right? So I would like to challenge actually what you said there, that you inspire. I agree, you will find some members on the team that will be inspired, that will want to work those extra hours. But there will be members of the team that will work those extra hours out of fear. And I have seen it time and time again, talking to colleagues, friends, and coworkers, where they completed that project in record time, and then they quit.
Yeah.
And company lost some of the best people. So that project was a great success. It was done in record time, and some of the best people left, and they weren't there to complete the next project in record time.
Do they have a choice to join the project?
I would say no.
So this is the key difference, I think, right? So when you have those sorts of burnout moments, and they happen, and they will happen for, like, I've asked my team to do these things, right? Like, they happen for real reasons, and there's a top-down, I don't have a choice in this, but we need to accomplish this. Burnout will absolutely happen, and you will drive away great talent. When it is not a matter of you have to do this, but do you want to do this, and do you want to be here and be a part of it? And listen, I know that, and I will completely agree, family comes first, right? I want you to be a part of this project because I think you're the right person to do this, and this is what I want to change, and I think you want to change that too. That's a different kind of conversation, and a person can give as much time of that as they want to. And it's not a matter of we have to hit this deadline or we fail and you're fired. It's a matter of we want to hit this deadline because that's the right thing that we want to do and that's the way we want to work. And listen, it's not to say like everyone was there all nights, every night, right? This is part of like leading smart projects and just making sure that someone is there when they need to be there and you let them go back to their day job, right? This is why I said there's like 3 principal people and then like a bunch of people who rotated in and out of the project over time. But I think asking and giving people the choice is going to be the key differentiator there in terms of whether or not someone's going to burn out and peace out or if they're going to be there and be happy that they were on the board. Hi. Yeah.
Hi. So I'm very interested in what you talk about, like kind of the 24-hour shifting. Even though it's in the same time zone, you could still kind of juggle it a little bit, like morning and afternoon shift, that kind of stuff. So one of my question is, with this approach, how did you make sure? I know you talk about transparency, things are passing down to the next person.
Yep.
With it, like me kind of thinking you, like for your staffing in your program, like they have kind of like a very similar ability as well, so they could kind of like get the point and then move on. And I kind of like interesting, how did you guys have trained the culture such that people could share the load and pick up any project at any time? Kind of idea, because for us is everyone's unique and then it takes time to adapt to the program. A rapid program like Light, by default you want to find whoever has the best background in a way because there's a lot of legacy information there.
Yeah.
But to me, I think the one point is how did you pass that information clearly to the next person that is not as familiar with that? And how did could you share some of that?
Yeah, sure. So each of, one, great question, fabulous nuance in that. Each of the working teams had point leaders, right? And so you saw one example there on Slack of from the San Francisco office, this is what we were able to accomplish today, this is what's coming on. As soon as the next team finishes, you again have a point person saying, this is what we've taken from that communication. These are the things that we're working on and accomplishing. Here's our ETA. These are the challenges that we've raised. Now, that being said, one of the parts I didn't show was whenever a big challenge occurred, all of those point people would get together, figure out what needed to happen, and you communally problem solve. So whatever doesn't get worked out within a 24-hour window of the cycle of communication, that then gets flagged as a trouble component that everyone debates and comes together and crowdsources a solution. So I think the difference is, the other thing I want to touch on is, it's not necessarily you're getting the best people, right? It's getting the people who feel the same way and who want to change the same problems, right? And so that conviction moment, right? The other people who share that conviction moment, again, just to the talk at the panel earlier, they're going to be passionate about the same thing you are in the organization. They want to change the same problems that you do. And so you're going to have, it might not be the best marketer and it might not be the best copywriter, but those people all care about it. And so that commonality actually becomes the framework for effective communication because you're all tackling the same idea. And whenever something comes up that's like really rough, then you just all get together and problem solve.
We have time for one last question.
No pressure.
Thank you, first off. This has been very engaging. My question is a follow-up, I think, to a lot of other people's questions because it seems like a lot of the issues and challenges and curiosities here have revolved around this 60-day timeline.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe many of us have experienced what feels like arbitrary deadlines oftentimes on projects.
Yeah.
So just to maybe complete your story a tiny bit more for us, where did that come from and why did you choose it?
Yeah, so full transparency, any 9 times out of 10, any deadline is arbitrary, right? We picked, honestly, we picked 60 days because 2 key people who were really invested in that type of solution were planning on leaving the company within that time window. And so we literally were like, well, hey, you're gonna leave, and like, we wanna give this a go before you peace out. But that being said, right, completely arbitrary. The whole point of this is it doesn't matter if it's 60 days or please don't make it 600 days, don't do that. But whatever your timeline is, it's okay to be arbitrary as long as everyone who's working on it agrees to it. There were some other things like product release schedules and stuff like that, where like if we didn't work it within like the first kind of like 60-day window, like we'd have to wait for another 3 months after that because of how we release products and some of our engineering stack. But honestly, it was a decision based upon who was going to be around to do the work and for what time. But I think whether or not it's 60 days, whether or not it's 6 months, whatever that time window is, I think the idea is that you need to create boundaries. And you need to create a window of time in which you all want to go work on this project so that it doesn't become a nebulous thing that everyone kind of puts like 1 hour here and there into. You want to set a program schedule for everyone who's going to come in and work on this in a meaningful, impactful way. And so whatever that timeline is, make sure it's clear across the entire group. And it can totally be arbitrary, but it has to be communally agreed upon. And it has to be a shared understanding. Yeah.
Thank you, James.
You're very welcome.